This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Stay tuned to save 10% or more on your purchase and learn more about building your website. For the past few weeks, I've been watching most of my friends play and talk about how incredible Elden Ring is. Pretty much every review I've watched or read has instilled within me an unshakable confidence that it's probably going to be exactly what I've always wanted a Souls game to be. Rave reviews across the board, everyone loves it. Hamish Black of Writing on Games described a sort of terrifying beauty, a world that won't stop unfurling, each location more interesting than the last. Hot Cider, who incidentally made the thumbnail for this video, talked about what lessons Zelda should take from it. Great videos, by the way, though I had to basically close my eyes while watching them because, newsflash, I only have around 6 hours in it, and most of that was me fumbling around a few side caves, which is certainly weird. A long time ago, I made videos on the Souls games, videos that I don't like anymore at all, but that's besides the point. Back in 2016, Dark Souls was close to being everything I could ever want in a game. Bloodborne, despite its frustrations, has risen to be one of my favorite games ever made, and though I am still stuck on the final boss, Sekiro was a refreshing change of pace. So to say that I was excited for Elden Ring would be the understatement of the century. I had every reason to play the shit out of it. And yet, 6 hours. So what happened here? Well, for one reason or another, I can't bring myself to play Elden Ring. I've tried over and over again. I just keep wandering around for like 15 minutes, getting nothing done, and quitting to go play something else. Which makes me feel like Squidward in the window, because from what little I have played, this game is beautiful, it is fun, it is everything I wanted Souls to eventually become. I think we can pretty quickly rule out the idea that the game is doing something wrong here. Moreover, it's much more likely that I am currently not capable of surmounting the challenges that it presents, myriad in number and frightening in scope. As I said before, this is not about to turn into a Dark Souls difficulty debate. Frankly, I don't even have a horse in that race. Whether they add an easy mode to Dark Souls or not, I don't really care. I'll let other people have that fun conversation. I prefer these games when they're hard, so I don't think I'd even play on easy mode if the option was afforded to me. This is more about the idea that I can't handle how relentlessly difficult it is. I'm not saying it's more or less difficult than Dark Souls is, I don't actually know that for a fact. It feels normal to me for a Souls game. I've heard it gets easier with the right build, but that's true of them all. It's more that I don't have the same headspace I did when I first discovered Dark Souls. I lack the willpower to exist in a harsh, unforgiving world, because right now, it feels like my own life resides in a harsh, unforgiving world that may or may not be on the precipice of complete and total collapse, depending on your outlook. The past few weeks, that has certainly been mine. I told my friends that I'd be the guy who found an extremely hard boss and bashed my skull into it for hours until the deed was done. Because that's who I was 7 years ago, that's who I was 2 years ago, that's who I was a couple months ago. When I started playing, though, if I ran into a hard boss, I'd just kinda go somewhere else, or summon help. Things I never used to do. I'd argue that's part of the beauty of it, that you can just skip a hard challenge for the moment and go somewhere else entirely, level up, get new spells or weapons, and then come back for an easier time. But it hasn't made playing the game any easier. It actually reminded me why I don't usually skip content like that. I'll start fixating on all the stuff I haven't done yet, wondering when I should get around to doing it again, all the while ignoring the beautiful vistas in front of me and the enemies popping out of the trees. The bosses I have beaten were all done with summons, which I acknowledge is a completely fine and valid way to play the game, just something I never personally liked doing until recently. It isn't as if I'm suddenly fine with making the game easier. It's something I did so I didn't have to crack my skull open to reach the next area. Cracking my skull open on a boss has a much more negative connotation in my head than it used to. I would much rather start playing Mass Effect for the first time, since it's basically talking to people and enjoying the story. I would much rather fuck around and play minigames in the Gold Saucer, because it's really mindless and comforting. There is a happiness and satisfaction to beating a tough boss in a Souls game, a euphoria unlike anything else. It's just that you have to get past the preliminary period where you're endlessly dying to make that euphoria as strong as it is. It's genuinely addictive, but I'm not willing to go through the headache of reaching that point at the moment. The hardest content I'm currently playing right now is in Final Fantasy XIV, where I'm doing some savage raiding, and the only reason I'm even able to put up with it is because there are 7 other cool people doing it with me. Being alone, afraid, frustrated, I'm trying to avoid those feelings right now. It might make some of you angry to hear that. You might think less of me, but I mean, that also makes you kind of a loser. It isn't just difficulty though. It's also the length. Oh, hardy har, the long video man is about to complain about video game length. Yes, you're right. I am about to do that. However, once again, it isn't necessarily that I think Elden Ring is too long. I haven't beaten it. I don't really know. What I am saying is that the length feels pretty daunting. As someone who loves to go everywhere and fight everything in these games, that estimated triple-digit number is only going to skyrocket, especially since I am not performing at 100% capacity right now. I've had to distinguish between personal and work time for the games that I play. It's not always a solid line. It blurs occasionally, but if I don't at least trace that line, I would probably burn out. Video games are a passion for me. Before I wrote about them, I played the hell out of them. I thought about them all day. I play a lot of video games. To do that, I have to set aside an hour or 2 of spare time. This works well with a game like Mass Effect, where you're basically watching TV most of the time.
I hate this channel.
No! No!
It does not work so well with Elden Ring. This gigantic, nearly impenetrable video game where an hour or 2 of playtime might mean 0 meaningful progress. I only have so much time, a fact that is starting to come into starker focus. I mentioned before that I'm trying to play through Mass Effect for the first time, but I also want to do other things. Hang out with friends, watch the Batman again because it's amazing, think about how good One Piece is all day long. Elden Ring just doesn't slot in as naturally as Dark Souls did when I was in school. The simple truth is that playing an hour or 2 of Elden Ring every other day is not nearly satisfying enough for me to keep doing it, especially since I'm probably going to be playing it for the next several months at the pace I'm going. If the game was simply long on its own, I don't think it would bother me very much. I still love the Xenoblade and Persona games. Their length has never been an inherent issue for me. I am going to binge Xenoblade 3 when it comes out, I know I am, but when you hike up the numbers in a famously difficult series, the two begin to mix into something far more insidious for the unprepared. This mixture can be felt in every one of the game's systems. I respect and appreciate how much you're able to customize your character in the Souls games. There are so many different builds, weapons, and spells to use, except this has always been one of my least favorite parts of these games, hence why I often go with the traditional sword and shield combo. I've always found it really intimidating how many options there are, and constantly worry about whether or not I'm using a shitty build that only makes the game harder or something. The word build is not one I want to be thinking about when I'm mostly here to explore. I decided to try broadening those horizons and went with an intelligence build. I explored this beginning section for hours, struggling with this limp pebble shooter, unable to find someone who would just sell me fucking intelligence spells. I found a whole ton of faith spells, but I had to have someone tell me where the intelligence teacher is because my luck was just that bad, I guess. I'm considering rolling another character, maybe a strength faith build or something like that, using magic as a secondary tool rather than a primary one. After all, I've only beaten 2 bosses, which is where our factors intermingle. Due to the game's difficulty and length, the prospect of setting myself back even a mere 6 hours is something I don't want to put up with right now. I don't want to play another 6 hours where I'm mostly re-exploring the same catacombs and fighting the same bosses again, just to make the game more fun. These games are built to be like that, to be unforgiving, to be impenetrable. I'd argue that's part of their appeal. Again, what worked for me before is no longer working. I'm not even confident I could go back and play any of the previous games again. And I know that for sure because I tried playing the Demon's Souls remake for a few hours and simply fell off. I've heard there's an option to respec your character, but like all Souls games, I have no idea where that option is, and I don't know if I'll even find it until I progress another 6 hours or something. I play these games to experience the world, to appreciate the level design, to talk to interesting NPCs, and learn a little bit about the world they live in. Even that has been hard to get into. The Souls games are bleak. They're dark, damp, depressing. It's a very specific mood that I've been in love with for years. Despite the dark shadow cast over them all, they are nonetheless some of the most jaw-droppingly beautiful areas I've ever seen. That mood brings with it an air of intangibility. These games are on a different wavelength, and it takes practice to become accustomed to their quirks. I am a fairly rusty Souls admirer. It's been about 3 years since I played Sekiro, and 3 years before that I played all the Souls games. During that time, I've forgotten things that should simply be reflex. I keep walking into caves without checking. I keep dying to bosses that I know would have presented no challenge to me several years ago. I don't even hit chests with my sword to check if they're fake anymore. That's how you know I'm rusty. It doesn't come as a shock to me that this rustiness would make my early game a living hell. See, in Elden Ring, the new name of the game is freedom. Go anywhere, do anything. Souls is no longer a Metroidvania. It's an open world. That new freedom of approach was tantalizing, and I took advantage of that to unknowingly skip the tutorial cave and then wander around the world, letting the game whisk me away somewhere. This, of course, turned out to be a tragic mistake. If you do not progress on the path that the game wants you to, about 3 lost graces on the intended path, you will lose out on the ability to level up, access to the big hub area, and a horse. There I was, wandering around some swamp, opening a chest, getting teleport-jabated to this cave with these creepy assholes, where I emerged into a blood-tinged sky and eventually lost all of the runes I had accumulated during my first few hours of playtime. I couldn't funnel them into anything, I couldn't level up, I didn't know where the blacksmith was, I didn't know how to do anything. It was one of the most confusing openings to a game I've ever played. Now, in retrospect, I really should have been more concerned that I didn't have the ability to level up yet. I had simply been too disconnected from what Souls is to notice. The last game like this I played was Sekiro, which mostly dropped all the diverse customization options of the series in favor of a more straightforward, action-focused experience. If we want to be technical, I haven't played a game built like Elden Ring since 2016, and with the massive anxiety I've been dealing with these past several weeks, it's hard to see a reality where I'm able to play more of it. And originally, this is where my script ended. I can't play Elden Ring right now. Oh, woe is me. Bit of a dour note to end on, so I'm going to try something a bit different here. I don't want to give up. I'm clearly struggling here, but I don't think it's impossible for me to still play and enjoy this game, despite how much I've changed. All it requires is the bravery to embrace a new mindset. What I'm going to do is re-roll my character. I know I said the idea of removing those 6 hours of progression was painful, but it is a necessary evil. I'm not getting anywhere interesting with my initial character, so the band-aid needs ripping off. Once I do that, I'll unlock all the useful early game abilities with my foreknowledge and try my best to let the game whisk me away. The reality is that this is no longer a Metroidvania. Trying to do everything might not be as possible as I envisioned. So instead of trying to twist and contort the game to fit my current mental state, I'm going to do the opposite and play by Elden Ring's rhythm. Whatever traditions I used to have are no longer compatible, so I'm going to utilize whatever makes the game less frustrating. This video is called Why I Can't Play Elden Ring, not Why I Will Never Play Elden Ring. I want to try my best to get through it, to honor the immense respect I have for From Software and their design approach. I owe it to them to give it my best shot. Maybe one day soon there will be a more thorough look at Elden Ring. Hope is pretty much all I've got these days, so I'll carry that flame to its last breath. But wait, what about Squarespace? There's really no excuse to not have a website these days. Even I have one. If you're interested, I've partnered with Squarespace for this video to offer you a chance to make one. Be it for music, art, merchandise, whatever, Squarespace can accommodate your needs, I assure you. I use my Squarespace website as a hub for newly released videos, updates on future videos, and more to come as I further develop its features. Link in the description if you're interested. You can make anything you want after watching their easily digestible tutorials and sleek intuitive building tools. Trust me, if I can make a website, you can too. There are step-by-step guides on what to do first, You can pick from dozens of potential pre-made styles, or scrap it all and start from scratch. They have hundreds of fonts to choose from. You can make things transparent, add color to the background, make image or video files your background. You can blur those images. You can add a store page if you're looking to sell music, art, or other merchandise. You can basically do anything to personalize your site for any use that you want it to have. Seriously, if you're a musician, artist, graphic designer, whatever, I guarantee you Squarespace will be helpful to you. So if you're looking to get started using Squarespace, you can begin your free trial today at squarespace.com/KingK using the code KingK to get 10% off your first purchase. That's squarespace.com/KingK using the code KingK to get 10% off your first purchase. There's really no excuse not to have a website these days, so get started now with the easiest, most accessible tool.